It's their first taste of freedom. Researchers are releasing several Przewalski horses into the wild.
11 wild horses, one lifeless desert, and a plan so reckless a film crew gave up filming it after 2 days. In 1986, China flew the last truly wild horses on Earth, Przewalski's horses, halfway around the globe and turned them loose in the Junggar Basin, a place with no grass, no open water, and winters that drop to 40 below.
The Przewalski's horse is genetically different and the only true wild horse subspecies. Its lineage split thousands of years ago, before horses were domesticated.
Every serious scientist called it a doomed idea. Ranchers said the land was already gone. But what these 11 animals pulled off over the next 30 years did not just save themselves. It quietly reversed a desert, and the dollar figure behind it stunned the experts. 11 horses against a desert that ate cities. See, these are not ordinary horses. They are Przewalski's horses, the last truly wild horse species left on Earth, gone from this region for 17 years. The Chinese government flew them in from zoos in East Germany and the United States, then turned them loose in a desert that was swallowing about 3,000 square miles of new ground every single year. The animals themselves look almost alien. Stocky bodies, stiff mohawk manes that stand straight up like a horse from a child's drawing, faint zebra stripes running down their legs. They look less like modern animals and more like the cave paintings our ancestors scratched into rock walls 40,000 years ago. And the place they landed in was brutal. Winter temperatures crashed to 40 below. Summer highs hit 104. The nearest water could sit 9 miles away, buried under 4 inches of solid ice. Survival experts gave them maybe a 1 in 6 chance of making it through the first winter. One scientist writing in a major journal called the whole thing throwing good money at empty soil. Local officials were already drafting the public statements that would explain the failure everyone expected. But here's the catch. To understand why anyone would try something this reckless, you have to understand what this corner of China had actually become. This was not just another animal rescue. This was about saving an entire region from turning into a place people could no longer live. Because 17 years earlier, the horses here had vanished overnight and the land started to harden like concrete. How a thriving basin turned into a wasteland. For 10,000 years, wild horses had roamed these grasslands and the whole ecosystem had grown up around their pounding hooves. Then in 1969, they vanished. Not slowly. Completely, the last confirmed sighting came from a Soviet survey team. A few hoof prints in dried mud, a handful of tan hairs caught on desert grass. After that, silence, and here's the part nobody saw coming. What followed was an ecological collapse that shocked even the gloomiest scientists. Without horses pounding the surface, the soil hardened into something researchers started calling biological concrete. Rain still fell, 4 to 6 inches a year. But instead of soaking in, the water sheeted across the hard crust and evaporated within hours. Seeds could not break through to sprout. By 1974, the soil was so empty that scientists compared their samples to lunar dust. Then the desert started moving. Satellite images from 1982 showed the Gobi pushing outward at about 43 miles every decade, swallowing grassland, villages, and farmland whole. Highways had to be moved. Rail lines were buried. And Beijing, more than 1,000 miles away, was getting hammered by dust storms that lasted for days. And get this. In March of 1983, a single storm dumped 43,000 tons of basin topsoil on the Chinese capital in under 72 hours. Hospitals reported a 300% jump in breathing emergencies. People were choking on a desert they could not even see, 1,000 miles from where it started. So China tried everything. A massive tree planting program, launched in 1978, aimed to build a forest barrier about 2,800 miles long across the northern frontier. But here's the catch. The trees needed more water than the desert could give. Water tables that had held steady for centuries dropped by roughly 40 feet in some areas. The trees, planted in neat rows like soldiers, started fading from the bottom up as their roots failed to reach the sinking water. Whole villages had to move when their wells ran dry. Engineers tried straw grids. They tried tough desert shrubs. Nothing held the line. By 1985, farm output in the region had fallen by 34%, and the desert was closing in faster every year. That was the mess a small group of ecologists, led by a researcher named Yang, was staring at when they walked into a government meeting and pitched something that sounded like fantasy. Stop fighting the desert with bulldozers and tree farms. Bring back the animal that had kept this place alive since the last ice age. But there was a catch they didn't see coming. Almost every wild horse left on Earth was locked inside a zoo. Why this horse was Earth's last wild gamble. Przewalski's horse is not just any horse. Look at its DNA, and you'll find 66 chromosomes instead of the 64 every domestic horse carries. It is the only horse on Earth that has never been tamed, never broken, never ridden. While people were breeding Arabians for speed and draft horses for muscle, these horses stayed exactly as they were when our ancestors painted them on cave walls. But here's the wild part. By 1985, the species was almost gone. Only about 900 existed anywhere, and every last one lived in a zoo. The whole species traced back to just 12 to 14 animals captured around the year 1900. After the Second World War, the population bottomed out at 31 horses, with only 9 able to breed. At one point, the entire species survived in just 2 zoos, in Munich and Prague. Every Przewalski's horse alive today still carries that close brush with vanishing forever. China's plan had 3 phases. First, bring horses from Western zoos and let them adjust at a new breeding center in Junggar. Second, move them into huge semi-wild pens, basically teaching zoo animals how to be wild again. Third, release them into a nature reserve covering about 1,500 square miles of some of the harshest land in Asia. Among the first horses moved into the pens was a young stallion with a clean white blaze down his face. Keepers named him Hong. Remember that name. Now here's where it gets good. Yang's pitch was not just that the horses would survive. It was that they would rebuild the land. These horses do not just eat grass. They engineer whole landscapes, and it comes down to 3 things. The first is brute force. Each horse weighs between 600 and 800 pounds. When they run, their hooves hit the ground harder than a jackhammer, cracking that hardened crust and letting water back in. But unlike a machine, horses are picky. They step around fragile young plants and pound only the bare, lifeless ground. The second is how they move. Tracking later showed these horses travel about 9 miles a day in looping, almost random patterns. They graze hard in one spot, drift miles away, then circle back. That creates a patchwork of short grass, tall grass, and bare soil, and each little patch supports different insects, birds, and small animals. And the third thing sounds almost absurd. Horse manure turns out to be a delivery system. One study found seeds from more than 20 plant species in their dung, and the trip through the gut boosts sprouting rates by up to 300%. A single gram of dung can hold more than 7 living seedlings, double what cattle drop and 8 times what sheep manage. Every pile is basically a pre-fertilized seed packet planted across 9 miles a day. That was the theory. The problem was simple. These horses had spent 3 or 4 generations behind bars. They had lost what researchers called the culture of survival, the know how a mother passes to her foal. A winter that was supposed to end them. The first months at Junggar nearly proved the critics right. Within weeks, parasites had hit every horse in the herd, burrowing into their stomachs and wrecking their digestion at the exact moment they needed every calorie. Then came the first winter, and it was merciless. Temperatures fell to 42 below. The horses, used to heated barns, huddled against winds that cut like razors. Their mohawk manes froze into icy ridges so heavy some animals could barely lift their heads. Snow buried the little grass that existed under 3 feet of powder. And here's the brutal part. Yang's team watched through binoculars and were forbidden to step in unless the whole herd was about to be lost. 7 horses developed severe frostbite. 2 pregnant mares lost their foals to the cold. The international press was already writing the project off. Conservation journals were preparing to call it a textbook failure. Yang himself, by his own later account, was bracing for the worst. But something nobody had scripted was starting to happen out on the frozen plain. The stallions started breaking the ice with their hooves to reach the water underneath, a behavior never once seen in any zoo. The mares started forming protective rings around their foals during storms, using their own bodies as windbreaks and switching positions when one got too cold. The horses learned to dig through snow with a sweeping motion of their front legs, uncovering grass no domestic horse would have thought to look for. They started reading the wind, learning which slopes had been swept clear and which had piled deep. And that's putting it lightly. They were not just surviving, they were remembering. 3 generations of zoo life had not erased what was written in their bones. The instincts were still in there, sleeping. The desert was waking them up. By the spring of 1987, the change sped up past anything the team had predicted. Grass species not seen in the basin for 17 years started sprouting where the horses had grazed. Plants that get clipped tend to grow back faster and thicker, and that effect pushed plant growth up 43% in grazed areas compared to untouched ones. The horses were not destroying the land. They were waking it. The soil changed too. In that first year, moisture holding jumped 23%. Not because of more rain, but because the horses' hooves had hammered roughly 10,000 tiny craters into every couple of acres. Each little dip became a mini reservoir, catching rain that used to slide off and vanish. The horses were rebuilding the basin's plumbing 1 footstep at a time. The second year brought another shock. Nitrogen in the soil surged 37%. The manure was not just fertilizer. It was carrying back the gut bacteria the soil had been missing for decades. By the third year, 22 plant species had returned from nowhere, their seeds apparently lying dormant for almost 2 decades, just waiting. The basin had not been lifeless, it had been sleeping. But surviving one winter is not a comeback, and the next one would prove if it was real. Numbers that broke every scientific model. It was not a fluke. The horses made it through the second winter, and the third, and the fourth. Once the plants came back, everything else followed. Dung beetles, gone from the basin for 15 years, returned by the millions and buried the manure, speeding the recovery loop. Surveys started counting dozens of insect species missing for decades. The insects pulled in larks and sand grouse. Small mammals followed the birds. Then foxes, eagles, and even the occasional wolf showed up on the camera traps. Each new arrival added another layer to the web. By the late 1990s, the herd had grown and the land had healed enough that Yang's team made a call that would have sounded insane a decade earlier. They took the fences down. In August of 2001, 27 horses were turned fully loose in the reserve. No fences, no feeding, no human help. Among them was Hong, the stallion with a white blaze, now fully grown and leading his own band. The team fitted tracking collars and held their breath. For a week, the horses barely strayed 500 yards from the release point. They drifted in circles. They kept glancing back toward the pens. And then came day 8. Just after dawn, one dot on the tracking screen started moving. Then the dots around it moved too. Hong was on his feet and his band fell in behind him. He did not drift. He did not graze. He walked north in a straight line like he knew exactly where he was going. 3 miles. 6:10. By the time he stopped, he had led his band about 19 miles north to a spring-fed pool that appeared on none of the project's maps. Nobody had shown him. No horse in his bloodline had walked that ground in his lifetime. He simply knew. How he knew is still one of the great mysteries of the whole operation. Then somebody did the math, and the numbers stopped sounding like ecology. When economists added up what a single one of these horses was worth to the land each year, soil repair, seed spreading, water holding, carbon storage, and wildlife support, they landed on about $47,000 per horse per year. By 2023, those original 11 horses had become 534. The herd was effectively managing about 66,000 acres, generating roughly $25 million in benefits every year. And the desert that once expanded by thousands of square miles was now pulling back where the horses roamed. So here's the real question. How many of today's disasters could be fixed by bringing back the animals humans wiped out, instead of spending trillions on machines that fail? Like and subscribe.